Ladies and gentlemen, all right, I'd like to call this Cleveland Heights City Council Committee of the Whole meeting to order. It is Monday, February 2nd at 6:02. Patty, would you please call the roll?
Cobb.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Tosh.
Here.
DeWitt Foy.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Studa.
Here. All right, first order of business is legislative review. So let's get into it. These first resolutions are for adoption requested tonight. 2026 is a resolution reappointing Mohammed Ifran as a member of the Climate and Environmental Sustainability Committee. I just look around, nobody wants to say anything, we'll just move on. 2026, resolution appointing James Arnold and Aaron Markovey as members of the Climate and Environmental Sustainability Committee. All right, 2026, resolution appointing Aaron Ware, Amber Rogers, Melinda Burt, and Bruce Delaney as members of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Resolution 27, 2026 is a resolution appointing a bunch of people. I'll read it. Rachel Bernstein, Don McBride, Shara Ben, Judith Ryder, Rumker, Eileen Ramerman, Amy Rosenbluth, Hannah Kinley, Mary Beth Matthews as members of the Arts Commission. Okay. I have a little something to say about that when we're out there. 2826, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Green Home Solutions LLC, a certified lead abatement contractor. Yes.
I do have a question for somebody.
Glad I came. You are somebody.
The memo for that resolution states that, quote, a budget amendment we needed for the, and then it gives the account number until the grant reimbursement is received. Do you need anything from council to make that adjustment, or is that something that finance can take care of?
I think finance will need to do it with council at some point before purchase orders.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have some questions on this.
Please.
So are we serving as a pass-through on this, or is this coming out of a fund that we have for, let's say, for mediation?
I wouldn't call it a pass-through just because we're administering the program, so it's a reimbursable grant.
And what selection criteria are we using for these properties?
So they have to undergo, well, first of all, they have to be income eligible. So that's the first requirement. The second requirement is that there's a lead hazard.
What is it, AMI? What is it?
For lead, this is actually coming from State of Ohio ARPA funds, so it's 120%.
Okay.
Do you have the address for this property?
I do.
Is it 1684 Belmar?
Sounds
It's a two-family though.
And it's owned by an LLC according to the property records.
This is a rental.
Pardon?
It's a rental project, correct.
So we don't have any requirement that these be owner occupied?
No, in fact, we normally operate a HUD-funded program, and they encourage that we don't limit it to owner-occupied because of the prevalence of lead in children of our tenants.
Right.
So it's less of a housing rehab program and more of a health safety program. If you think of it that way, then there's less of a concern about it. I wouldn't say encouraging investment properties, we're just trying to solve a problem that's pervasive in the community.
I'll just say I'm troubled that we're providing funding for an LLC on a piece of rental property.
I will say it's been a normal thing since I've been in the city before, but lead only projects.
And I should have scrolled through. So is the scope of the work, is that in our packet that's covered by this?
It's on file.
Yeah, it should be in the exhibit.
And
No,
what
it's
is,
on file.
Oh, I thought, okay. Thank you.
and offhand, the scope of the work involves more than painting? Are we talking window replacement?
Those doors, possibly siding.
And then what is done to ensure that I mean, it sounds like most of this is being used to rehab this property. To make sure that the money is being properly spent for lead remediation and not going for some other repairs.
Only used for lead remediation and then any supporting, so say if you're painting something and it's rotten wood, you're gonna have to replace that wood. There's no point in painting rotten wood. So there's supportive measures that could be included with these funds, but only to support the lead abatement.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little bit surprised that an LLC would qualify, I mean, just financially, because usually people who own properties.
It's the tenant that's qualified.
Oh, it's the tenant, okay, my bad. And then,
Wait,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, the tenant?
So so with CDBG, we're allowed to do, to assist rental properties, we don't. But it's always the tenant that's qualified, not the owner of the property. Because the benefit is considered the tenant, the
And
person that's living in the property.
most likely there was a child diagnosed with lead poisoning as well, correct?
Well, that does happen, I don't know if that's the case here, but we would like to prevent that from happening.
So there's still money that's laid out by the owner too, right? It's not,
Correct.
this is a subsidy, so to speak.
Correct.
And how much is left in this fund that we're spending out of,
So all of this is an update from my last
please?
updated council. All of those funds have been encumbered and the extensions have been granted by the state of
I see.
the county and the city, so Sharon Dumas, if you're listening.
And you did say that the last time, I just didn't remember. Any other questions?
And I'm sorry not to belabor
No,
this.
go ahead.
And do we have a copy of the rental agreement?
I would guess we would, we should check for that, but HBO staff probably does. As part of, I would guess we would because we would have to qualify the tenant and we have to sort of have a chain of who actually lives there, who officially lives there. If it's vacant, lien is put on the property until with income eligible tenant.
I'm sorry, I should have been paying attention to these more closely in the past. I mean, it just doesn't sit right with me. That it's actually going for the, I understand, you know, there's a tenant in there, but it's actually going for the long-term benefit of the property owner.
I think that's a secondary benefit, to be honest. I mean, the main goal of this is to prevent lead poisoning.
Is there a, I was trying to look for the urgency and I remember the budget amendment. Is it important that council considers taking action on this tonight? I know it's under that part of the agenda.
In order to start work, it's important that council be allowed to enter the contract.
We're gonna have to certify funds, right?
Right.
Okay.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes, I have a quick question. So I believe that the city of Cleveland has a similar program. Is that similar in the way that it's executed, that LLCs and owners that are renting out are allowed to access that program?
Yeah, I don't
Do you know?
I don't know for certain how their programs run, but I would assume that they also, from knowing who their subrecipients are and the kind of projects they do, I would almost guarantee that the city of Cleveland also does rental properties
Thank you.
under the same rules as well.
Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna move on. 2026, a resolution authorizing an agreement with all public safety outfitters for the purchase and installation of outfitting equipment. This is for the police cars. Questions on the outfitting? All right, 2026, a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of city administrator for the city of Cleveland Heights. We did an interview, what day, last week?
Monday, I think. Is it Monday?
Monday last week, okay. So we're ready to vote on that. First readings only. Resolution 31, 2026, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement to lease an unoccupied room within the city's recreation center located at, well, rec center.
There is a request to move this to first reading for passage, just so you guys know.
I did not know that. Go ahead. Well, let's start with Cobb for a change.
Can we get some details on this?
So this was an initiative from the former administration that we've been working to bring to completion. This is Gulnar from the LGBTQ Center, and she can speak more thoroughly about this than myself.
If you have specific questions, but I can just share overall, we've been providing programming to LGBTQ plus residents of Cleveland Heights for the last 18 months. And one of the initiatives that we had approached the previous administration with was about having a space out of which to operate our programs for more, permanence and sustainability. Right now, we utilize a small room if and when as it's available for our seniors, our older adults. The type of programming that we are offering and want to continue to be able to offer and expand include recovery programs, Pride Recovery, which supports individuals on their recovery journey, utilizes an evidence-based recovery model called Smart Recovery. We offer programming for older adults, 50 years and older, focused on both physical and mental health and well-being. We provide a support group for parents of LGBTQ plus children. It's called Open Arms, and really about building community and social support for parents as they support their young people, especially in an increasingly hostile environment towards LGBTQ individuals. We also have intergenerational programming that we do twice a month, bringing together just, people across the different ages to really build community and provide a type of mentorship to younger individuals from our elders in the community.
Thank you.
And room 8 is located where at exactly?
It's room 7, or room 8 actually, next to room 7. So it's an enclosed room upstairs in the fitness center. So, where you have, I know that I've seen you at that class.
Yeah.
So it's, not to call you out, but it's a room adjacent to that class. That's an enclosed room.
Back
It's
as
right
you're headed
across
towards
from
the
back
elevator?
doors. Yep, right next to
Okay.
the elevator.
All
Yep.
right.
Madam Vice President?
Just a logistics question on the timing of this lease, because obviously January is already passed. And I'm concerned that you'd be charged because the lease goes January 1, 2026 to December 31st, 2026. So I wanna make sure that you're not paying for a space that you're not in yet, so.
Well, I know that they brought furniture in how long ago?
Oh, this was last year around March, because we were told that we would have the space and that we could start bringing in, like a desk and a chair for our staff to be able to work out of the space. So we've had 2 items in that space since then.
And then they've been in a holding pattern since then.
So my question's not about the program, which sounds great. It's about the policy. I mean, it's $200 a month. I don't know, how do we arrive there, and is this offered to, I have to ask the mayor, I don't know.
And admittedly, I'm not sure either, and so if Jonathan or the law director might have some context there, some history that I think might be.
Well, I think Gulnar can kind of speak to what
That
the
was
thought process
the
was.
amount that we had discussed with the previous administration. So technically, we were supposed to, the year prior to last year, so 2024, October is initially when we started these conversations. With the intention being for us to have a established lease to begin utilizing that space beginning January of 2025. And so this has just been this ongoing holding pattern that we've been in with the city to be able to have some sort of space to be able to continue to serve our LGBTQ residents here in Cleveland Heights in the way they deserve to be served.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I don't have to give my name is Zach Joseph. I'm a former council member for the city of Riverside, Ohio. I'll explain why I'm here later. There's a organization in Riverside called Project Riverside. The city of Riverside used to lease a shelter house, an unused shelter house. Actually, this is really valuable. So they leased a unused shelter house to Project Riverside. I'm trying to find the amount. They used it for a few years. There's a lease agreement. You can public record search that. It burnt down. Story behind that, I don't know what happened. The property ended up burning down. And then just make sure there's an insurance policy or something around that, because we ended up taking that money and building a bike ramp park, which is really, really cool. That just the ribbon got cut. But that's a story about kind of a very similar situation of us, this not neighboring, but a city in Ohio who's done a very similar thing.
I just think it's important that we have some kind of policy about the space there and, rentals and so forth. That's all.
And an insurance policy.
Yes.
Mr. President, I would just, I'm not aware of prior instances of establishing, monthly rent. Particularly with regard to the community center, Jonathan or Andres would probably have a better handle on that. From the legal standpoint, the two most important things, I think, other than, yes, there will be an insurance requirement and so forth, are that it's not space that's needed by the city at this point in time and through the foreseeable period of the lease, so that it is available to be utilized for a different but still public leaning purpose. And then secondly, that it has council approval, because a lease, as opposed to a license, is an interest in real estate. And so council needs to authorize that.
Yeah, I mean, my point is that there's, there's a policy in place for renting rooms and so forth. And we probably need something for that. Councilman Cohen?
I have a question for the LGBT Center representative. All the programs that you just described, are those all going to be offered at this location?
That is the intention, to be able to have a permanent space where we can offer these programming. Right now, we're offering them at the library. If there's space available, we'll try to reserve the spot to be able to offer we just want to be able to have consistency and sustainability around our presence here in Cleveland Heights, so that we can build off of that to be able to be doing more.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Not to put you on hold any longer, but you can see that we're struggling with this because we didn't know, and now we're getting information that's coming out. I would still like to see it go to a second reading.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that, but is there some compelling reason why we need to do this today?
For us, it's just
I mean,
a
no
sense
offense,
of
but it's been a year or so.
yeah. So
Yeah,
we
it's
just
at
want to
Yeah, I get it.
figure out where we need to go, because we have been looking at other trying to build partnerships with other organizations to see if we could have a presence there. We just strongly felt that if we are to begin expanding our presence and programming and services, we wanted to start with Cleveland Heights, because historically this has been a safe harbor community. It has been accepting, it has been affirming and supportive of our community. And so, for all of those reasons, we would like to be able to have a presence here and then build from there. And we have a lot of LGBTQ people that live in this community.
No, and we're, we appreciate getting the information today. What we don't like to do is go, oh, okay, and then just, 15 minutes later, go and vote, because, we're just processing this and we need more than just today. So without objection, I'd like
ask
to.
a question?
Yeah,
If,
go ahead.
in terms, it seems like the rental amount might be also an issue or something. I mean,
Well, that's not the
Okay.
issue, that's not the issue. What I was bringing up is what's the policy? That's way different than that amount. I can't even talk about that because I don't know what the policy is.
got it.
So,
Thank you.
$200 could be reasonable, but, or, what it should be, I wouldn't know.
So,
Paul,
so will you follow up with Director Gonzalez or? do you need to?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Excuse me, 32-2025. Wait, is that right? Is it 2025?
Oops, sorry guys, 2026.
Alright. Thank you. Resolution providing for a contribution in support of the Heights Schools Foundation Fitness Under the Lights event. Is this the 15,000?
Yes.
Okay. So do you guys know the story? There was an event last year that the mayor, former mayor, said, we're gonna pitch in $15,000. We didn't sign off on it, it's been coming before us, but the event has happened. We partnered with University Heights.
They asked, yeah.
Yeah, and the two mayors said, yeah, let's do it, but it never came to us, but the bill has come. So, I don't know.
Is this for last year or is this for a request for this?
No, this is for last year.
September.
This happened months ago. Go ahead,
Mr. President?
go ahead.
Yeah, it was for an event that happened in September. We have bits and pieces of information that does confirm that the mayor agreed to the funds, but we just didn't have any contract or invoice put in place. And so in the absence of that, we just need council approval. Heights Schools Foundation is a strong partner and we just want to make sure that we maintain that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to do this. I'm a little bit surprised that there's an email with my name to the mayor, asking the mayor, hey, are we doing this? And I got no response from the mayor. So I mean, it's not like that, yeah, I know, surprise, surprise. I mean, it's not like it's something that was not on our radar. I really wish, I mean, now I'm thinking of the Heights Schools Foundation. I mean, they've been without this. What a mess.
It's been there.
But I think we have to do it.
Two questions. One, the request and the resolution is for 15,000, but I believe in the email it mentioned that University Heights and Cleveland Heights had agreed to 10,000 each. So I was wondering if anyone had information as to why the request is now for 15,000.
I don't.
When I was reviewing the emails, the last update that I saw from the mayor to, it was either all of council or to one or two of the members was a correction saying actually the amount is 15,000. And that was corroborated with the ask that Heights Schools Foundation brought back to comms in November.
And that
So-
actually is in the email. It references the 10,000 from each community in a September 3rd email, and then the next reply in that correspondence that the councilman mentioned is the mayor's correction that is 15 from each was the ask.
Okay, and then my second question is, now that this is an unbudgeted for item in 2026, where is this money intended to be taken from? Which line item in our 2026 budget?
Peter or Paul?
Or Mary.
We don't have anybody from finance here, I don't believe, but Mayor, could you follow up on that?
Yes.
Sorry, we don't have we'll follow.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, this is only for first reading, right?
Correct.
We have-
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna move on. There's a second reading for 2026. Resolution authorizing the city to participate in the NOPEC Green Community Choice Program. Any questions on that? How are we? I guess I could ask Director Shantz about this. How are we planning on rolling this out to the community?
I did confirm with Andy that it has to get passage through you, so we couldn't make any public announcement. But if it is passed tonight, we would utilize all of our communications channels to let people know that they should be expecting a letter in the mail.
And in the content, would it tell them what besides telling them what the program is, what their alternatives are?
I think that would be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably need to write something up and give approval to Andy, the mayor, to make sure that that's what we wanna be communicating out on behalf of them.
understood, yeah.
We also asked Tony about the rate, so I'm hoping that in the letter that you see, there will be a rate declared for the kilowatt hour.
Well, the person that's now taken over is not Tony, it's I'm not remembering, I have his card.
Yeah, I have his card too, I'll follow up.
Alright. So that's it for legislative review. Not bad on the time. The Blanche Avenue Extension Project. Is
it okay if I come to you, David?
Yeah. Come join us.
So we wanted to, the administration wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Blanche project. By way of context, as you all may or may not know, there's a project, capital project, where we have federal funds to construct the previously planned from 1921 Blanche Avenue to the extent of Andrews Avenue. That would allow for the construction of approximately 20 to 25 infill homes in that part of the neighborhood. There was some public engagement that happened last year. And it was, there were a lot of concerns raised by the community, and then everything happened last year. And we sort of put everything to rest on this project. I've spoken with the mayor. He's really interested in moving forward with the project, but recognizes that engagement is really, really important. And so what we wanted to do is see if we could sort of co-create that engagement with you, so it would be co-hosted by the administration and the council, because ultimately it's a decision that you're gonna have to make on infrastructure. And so we wanted to talk about, number one, would you be up to that? And then number two, what the expectation would be, a meeting in council chambers, going back out into the community, doing it at the community center. And then the last, I think, part of this conversation is we had treated it previously as an infrastructure project. But the mayor brought up a good point. Well, it's an infrastructure project with home construction, infill housing. That is the result of it. So should we invite the private developer who has purchased or has agreements to purchase most of those properties to come and be a part of those meetings? So before we open it up, I just wanted to mention two things. I was recently on a webinar, and it was a controversial project in California, and the community said that they held community meetings not to reach consensus, but to hear as many opinions as possible to inform their decisions. And so I think you're going to hear this from me as we talk about engagement in various matters. We want to hear from as many people as possible before we make decisions. And then number two is there's a lot of education that comes with this project and other projects. So we think it's a good opportunity to, present what the project is, present the benefits of it, and then hear from folks. Mayor, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
So what are the objections from the community members? I mean, if there's been some public engagement thus far.
So Brian was most recently at the meeting. I'd say some of the objections are, I'm against the project. There are folks who have put up lawn signs over there. I don't know if you've been in that part of town, but they like the dead end. They want to protect that. They'd like to see a park. Those are obviously different objectives than doing infill housing. And I think this is where the education can come in to talk about it's private property for the most part. It's a right of way that exists. And so it's been mostly things about people worried about their backyards and how that might change. There's been some concerns about traffic and things like that. We've done environmental reviews because there's federal funding in that. So there's been opportunities for people to comment in those arenas, but and there'll be another opportunity for a historic survey that's coming out this spring. But it's been a little bit all over the place.
Is this something council has to okay?
Yes, the construction is, you'd have to ultimately approve a bid document to go out. And what you did approve is a design contract with GPD. So that's part of this, is getting the design so we can talk, so we know what we're talking about when we engage with folks. And engage with you.
Who pays for the infrastructure improvements?
So the infrastructure improvements are a combination of a federal allocation plus an assessment district. So only those properties would be paying for this, but not other taxpayers in the city.
And what about the maintenance part of this?
Well, it would become a city road, so.
Right, okay. Go ahead.
The people who will be assessed for the improvements will be those new homeowners,
Correct.
not
Yes.
established homeowners on Blanche Avenue.
Correct.
That's one of the concerns I have.
Yes.
And some of the people, just to answer your question, some of the people have said, I bought this house because, neighbors, and they don't want neighbors. Go ahead, Councilwoman Cohen.
Yes, Director Sam, to what you just said before about the question of infill housing and a private developer, were you saying that there is already a developer, or can you just talk about like where we are in that part of the process?
Sure, so that's not our process, but there is a private builder who has contracts with the private property owners for the vast majority of those properties. And we have not been discussing that part of it because it's been not our part of the process, but the mayor brought up the point that for the public, it's hard for them to distinguish between the public sector and the private sector, so maybe we just bring them into the conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that, particularly because we saw that in the planning commission quite a bit, where this distinction between what actually the city can do for private property, which is not a lot. And my second question is, when you said it's through to Andrews Avenue, because I'm pretty familiar with this part of our city, does that mean that Andrews Avenue will also be constructed out to Blanche, and so they'll meet, but then it would dead end at Andrews and Blanche? Is that how the design is currently?
Yeah, correct. And I said that on purpose because one of the concerns that some people have said, oh, this is gonna go all the way out to Warrensville Center Road, which number one, it can't, but it doesn't. So it's not gonna be a cut through in terms of people cutting through the neighborhood to get to South Euclid.
And then the last question I had is, because that is essentially the border with South Euclid, is that so the private property, it's entirely on the Cleveland Heights side? So there's no, is there a taking from the South Euclid Park that's already there, or this is purely Cleveland Heights privately owned property that's running?
Purely Cleveland Heights, privately owned property. But we have had conversations with South Euclid because there might be needs for staging and things like that when the project is constructed. But that's all part of the process, is working with our neighbors as a project continues.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is just the support for your and the mayor's thought around bringing in the question of infill housing as a community engagement, because I think while we've heard a lot of objections from current homeowners, there may be many people in the city or outside the city that are interested in new construction and housing, and we always tend to hear those that object to projects, but we don't always hear from proponents that are looking for whatever might be in development. So I just want to second the suggestion that we start talking about what opportunity this might bring, as opposed to necessarily focusing on the negatives of this or what might happen to the current streets there. Thank you.
You mentioned a previously approved design bid or packet.
DPD contract.
Yeah, can you update us on where we are with that? Do we have a completed design? Can we see that? Is that what would be discussed in this engagement that you're proposing?
We don't have the final design because the intention was to use engagement to refine the design. And like I said, we held off at the end of last year. So there's money left in their budget to refine the design, but certainly we can share the version of it with you and with the community. We're happy to do that. That's the intention.
Okay.
And that's roadway design, correct?
Roadway design,
Okay,
and landscape design. Those
right,
two
but not homes and.
Right.
Councilman Posh and then Cobb.
So I'm just trying to get a sense of the scope of this. So Blanche runs parallel to Bainbridge, you have Maple. Will the road connect to Maple? And then from Maple to Andrews?
Yes.
Houses on both sides of the street?
No, just one side of the street. The other side is South Euclid.
Would there eventually be houses on the other side of the street?
That is their part.
It's a lot of houses.
It's about 20 houses, but it fits the pattern, 20 to 25, it fits the pattern of those streets.
Thanks.
So the federal funds that we were awarded, are those sitting in one of our accounts or are those monies that we still need to draw from the federal government?
Those are reimbursement dollars, so what we've done, just to refine the question, is we have the okay to refund our soft cost expenses, the design. So again, that's not gonna come out of our pockets, it's gonna come out of this grant. But we would only get reimbursed for the other monies should we construct the road.
And the money that we got through Chantel Brown's office was what, 1.2?
850,000.
850,000. And then if my memory serves me correctly, we authorized in a prior budget $900,000 for paving.
Well, it's the
For the road. That's how it was presented to us. I don't know, back in 2023 or 24. Is that money still sitting there with that appropriation as paving?
That is a question I've had for some time, because it was a 2024 capital project. And the question is, what happened to those? Are those funds still available or not?
Where do we go to get that answer, whether they were encumbered and still sitting encumbered?
They went into tears.
I can speak with finance in the morning.
Okay, so this presentation will also have to tell us what the city is looking for that we're gonna have to appropriate to do this work, to cover what's not gonna be from that federal grant.
But again, it would be a reimbursement, so there would be an outlay of money that we would pay for the construction that would be reimbursed by, well, not reimbursed, the assessment would pay for that money, those monies, that gap.
So if there are road costs, is it all reimbursable? Or is there a piece of this that we will have to budget for?
So
And you probably don't know the answer, and that's fine, but I mean, eventually we're gonna need to know if there's any, cause something over 2 years is not gonna be. Well, we don't know, maybe it's still on the book someplace.
Councilman, I'm sorry. Are you talking about, will the city be out of pocket for the roadway construction, depending upon how other things play out?
Right.
The answer should be no. Some of the money will be reimbursed from the federal government pursuant to that grant, and the other city costs should be recovered from the assessment from the benefited properties.
Okay. Well, I suppose there's another, I mean, is there tax abatements at all on any of these properties?
Those could be eligible for our citywide CRA, depending on what that zone is. And that's part of the education I think we want to talk about in engagement is we have a citywide CRA. Any property is eligible for that depending on the level is where you are in the city.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Director Sanft? All right, thank you. Oh,
He did ask us about putting together a public engagement event or how we wanna handle that, so,
I'm sorry, I'm
yeah.
always looking at my watch.
And I think it is really a good idea to have everybody involved, and including that developer, so I'm all
Okay.
for that.
If I could just suggest an idea. If it would be okay, could we work the administration and council to have a meeting, a listening session in March, let's say, and then we see how that goes.
Location?
I think there is an advantage to doing it in council chambers because there's something about the formality of it that, because people, as you know, they tend to come to council and they don't always come to community events. So I think if we say that this is really a council and administration event, that it will show up.
Will you have good pictures and so forth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, we don't have to move the video equipment either. If we have it here.
Well, yeah. So you wanna pick a date and we'll,
Yeah, we'll work with Addie to.
yeah, there you go.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, next up, we have Michelle Jackson here from Ranked Choice Voting. You wanna come to the table?
May I? Thanks, John.
So this is about ranked choice voting. It's a topic we discussed last year. We did not choose to put it on as part of the charter review. Not as part of the charter review, as part of the charter, revised charter, but we're here to talk about perhaps doing it this year.
Yeah, we're ready?
So you can take it from
Great,
here.
thank you so much. Thank you, President Kuda. Thank you, Vice President Larson, and all y'all. I appreciate being here. So what I was originally asked to kind of look at was what would be a kind of good timeline for this getting to the ballot. We're looking at November 2026, and it seems like a long time, but it's really not because voting starts in October. So what I've done here is put together just a brief timeline to kind of show when things could happen that are based on your schedule as well, okay? And I'm calling it Roadmap to RCV, Reshaping Campaign Culture in Ohio. I know, right? I wanted to go back to the future first because I want to remind you guys that ranked choice voting is not new, it's not newfangled. It actually started in Ashtabula, Ohio in the United States in 1915. So it has a pretty long history of being in use in this country. After Ashtabula, we had 4 other cities that followed. In fact, the first Black council people elected in Cincinnati came through ranked choice voting. And Harriet can give you chapter and verse on this much better than I can. And in Cleveland, they actually used ranked choice voting for city council, and that was the first time that women were on council under ranked choice voting. And then I call it a victim of its own success. RCV is designed for representation and equity in elections. And so by the mid-20th century, we're coming out of the 50s, the 60s, a lot of racial stuff happening. It just all blew up. So the gender wars, the racial wars, all of that. And in Ohio, it started getting repealed around the mid-20th century. Today, in the last decade, we've gone from 10 RCV cities to over 52. So it is something that is trending right now. Okay, and then to 2024, your Charter Review Commission recommended RCV as part of the charter updates. And you had a committee of the whole in January where everyone around the table, there was 6, did agree that this should advance to the ballot for the voters to decide. We were not having the question of, do we like RCV? The question was, this is what the Charter Review Commission recommended, and should we take it to the voters? Okay, now these are some key dates. I'm proposing that no later than May 18th for a first reading. It could be before that, but we do need to have some time to do some hearings and get the public involved. You guys are recessing from mid-July to mid-August, so I'm kind of like counting that as a situation where not much is gonna happen. October 6th is when voting begins, and then of course we have the election November 3rd, and that's when we would anticipate having this on the ballot. Okay, so February, March, April, and Tony, I think this is where there was some confusion. I call them town halls, but they're hearings, and it's putting it before the public.
Education.
Yeah, exactly,
back and forth.
but a council and in partnership with us, we can do sort of the education part, set up some sort of demonstration situation. And I recommended 3 of them in different parts of town, although after hearing this gentleman, I do like that whole idea of council chambers, but on the other hand, it's limited size-wise, space-wise. And I know that when you did the first tranche of recommendations in September, that you actually did at least one hearing at the library. And yeah, exactly. So I think that it would be helpful, and some parts of town feel like they're always neglected. My thinking was that we should be able to do 3 town halls between February, March, April. And do some ranking events, house parties. We'll be continuing what we always have been doing with Rank the Vote Ohio, which has been like hitting events, like we were signed up to get a table at the Resistance Fair. So we will continue that, that's gonna continue. I sent you guys some language that was recommended by Fair Vote, and I don't know if Bill had a chance to look at it. But Harriet told me today that when the Charter Review Commission was writing up the recommendation, that they actually met with got a lot of help from Fair Vote. So it should look pretty similar. Fair Vote is an entity, for those of you who may not know, they are set up to really promote proportional representation, ranked choice voting nationwide. They do a lot of research, policy. They have been handling these sorts of ballot initiatives as well as legislatively getting RCV passed. That's what they do. And so they're pretty much experts in all of that. If you guys would like to have a meeting with them, I'm leaving room in there in February, March to do that. If you find it necessary, but I did give you the draft of proposed ballot language and amendment language. So town halls, and then just May 18th, I'm looking, oh, Jessica Cohen. But May 18th is, yeah, that's okay, that's fine. Is a time, it will allow for 3 hearings. Now, it could also pass, you know, I call it emergency ordinance, but immediate effect if you already have the votes there. But if not, the May 18th will allow for more input, really getting a feel from the public on this, but the language pretty much needs to be decided on. And I'm also thinking, President Kuda, that the town halls, the hearings could also really help to workshop the language as well, making sure that that's clear to people. I had a really good meeting today with Jessica, with Mr. Berger, and a couple of things that we talked about and how do you put this out there to the public. And so I got some really good insight from him in terms of particularly with the Orthodox community. So we're looking at this from a whole bunch of angles, okay? Okay, any questions on that? Does that seem extreme? Okay.
So when you said the language needs to be finalized by May 18th,
I'm saying the first reading would, that you would have your language and it would be a first reading in council.
and that date is based on,
Well, it's based on that you need to get to, you guys are breaking in July. You need to have May and June for, if you have to do 3 readings, then you break for a while and then you have to come back and get all of this to the Board of Elections by September 4th. So that is our back end date, September 4th. To get this through
that
council.
does seem accelerated to me.
Does it?
It does.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, council could do something like this on 1 reading. I don't think that would ever happen, and I wouldn't recommend it. Their standard rule is 2 readings, and many times they take up charter amendment related legislation like in August, although I don't recommend doing that for the first time in August. So
Right, that's not gonna
getting
happen.
well down the road makes sense. May 18th seems very ambitious to me.
Yeah, and I think we can do it. I have faith. Yeah, but realistically looking at that you're gonna be up against that September 4th and council will be taking a break this year, which they didn't get last year. So you're basically taking out a
They took a
month.
break and they got a charter to ballot.
We were really up against it with the
Oh, I
first
know.
tranche,
Yeah.
okay? And I want to sort of avoid that. Because as part of my community outreach, I'm hearing a whole lot of chatter from folks. And there was some real dis-ease with being right up against it. We're working on the language right before it's going to the BOE. So I'm keeping that in my mind, that I would like to give us some breathing room. This is not new for y'all. You've been talking about this since 2024. So it's not like we're starting from scratch. So I think it's doable, but it depends on what else ends up on your docket. But knowing that September 4th is that date, okay?
Sure.
Yeah, cool.
Did you wanna?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things we have the luxury of this time is that we can get some education done before it comes to the council.
1000%.
So if the law department has the legislation, they can start looking at it when they feel it's timely. If the first meeting in June works out, then we still have time to get it done by September 4th. But I really feel that the education piece is important.
Sure.
I committed to putting this on the ballot so that our voters can decide. And in order to help them make the best decision that they're comfortable with, those education sessions are important. So I don't know what we do to begin the process of scheduling those meetings before we even start looking at our legislation.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I wanna hear what people are saying before we do any of that.
Yeah.
And I've looked at this and I still have lots of questions, so I would just assume that, you know, other people would too. Go ahead.
This looks to me as if you're looking to this city council to be sponsoring and advocating for this legislation. Now, if there are 5 city council members that are in favor of that, that's different and they can argue for it. I mean, that's just my concern about what you're talking about here.
Yeah, I've heard you've expressed that concern, and at the last committee of the whole, you definitely expressed that concern. And Joe, I thought was a very good question, that is council normally sponsoring and promoting things like this? So I think it's fair to say that council needs to put it on the ballot for the people to decide. Part of what our Rank the Vote Ohio is in business to do is to educate about ranked choice voting, the benefits of ranked choice voting. So that I would see that the hearings, what I'm calling town halls, would be jointly between us. I've also, since we met last time, I have brought in the Cleveland Heights League of Women Voters. So most likely we will be doing the council, RTVO, and the League of Women Voters of Cleveland Heights. So we don't look for you to necessarily get pom-poms, but if this is something that your Charter Review Commission that was impaneled by you recommended and you do decide to put on the ballot, I would just look for you not to be talking against it because it was a decision made through a process that you guys supported and got it there. So, I mean, I understand your concern.
Agreeing to put it on the ballot is one thing, but advocating for it, in my mind, I'll just speak for myself, is something completely different.
I understand.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
again, what you're proposing to do and use the auspices of city council and city facilities, it's gonna turn into a promotion in favor of it.
Go ahead.
Well, I kind of agree with the last thing that Councilman Cobb mentioned, which is essentially, greenlighting what the recommendation from our Charter Review Commission is very different than actually, and I'm going to use the word endorsement as opposed to sponsor, and endorsing. Now, I mean, I just to be transparent, I personally, I like both. But me doing an endorsement, I'm unsure that I can really endorse something as a council member. We can put it on the ballot, but I feel a little uncomfortable. I mean, I think we'd have to get like a law department, I need to get some legal opinion because I'm not sure we can really endorse it as council. I mean, individually, we can, but in a council meeting with the cameras running under city time, I'm not sure we can.
I know the answer to that. No.
I hear you. I don't know that anywhere it's being asked for endorsement. This is a process that deciding to, just like you put the other recommendations on the ballot for the voters to decide, I don't see that this is any different. Other than that, some people are not comfortable with RCV around this table. But as far as the process and what you're doing is you're completing the recommendation of the Charter Review Commission from 2024. But I don't see this as asking for you to endorse. I don't know that council people do that. I don't know that city councils endorse. I don't think I've seen that.
No, but
Individually.
But let me just address what you just said about, okay, the Charter Review Commission endorsed it. There are things that
they
I'm sorry,
recommended it.
They recommended it, sorry, recommended it. There are other things that they recommended that we changed, just so you know. I just wanna make that clear. Go ahead, Mayor.
Mr. President, I see this situation as very similar to issue 10 in 2022. So for those who do not know, City Council did not always have a clerk. There was a time when the clerk was that responsibility was part of the function of the finance director. And so in 2022, City Council voted to send issue 10 to the voters, which would allow council to hire its own employees. And as a part of that, individual council members decided to go out and support it, went to organizations to try to get support. But those were the decisions of individual council members who were not speaking on behalf of the body, but they were speaking in their own capacity. And I think that that would be the case here. Any council members who are interested in supporting it certainly have a First Amendment right and can, but they're not speaking on behalf of the body or on behalf of the city.
Is that the rule? I mean, is
That's
that,
correct, yeah.
okay, go ahead.
I still feel we have an organization here that's willing to put the time and the energy in. If we don't have it as a council meeting, but we allow them to use space in the city, or some of us volunteer to donate that cost of that space. I'm not interested in endorsing it at this point or recommending. I just wanna follow through with what promises were made at the end of the charter review process, and that we did not feel we had the capacity to put RCV in front of the voters at that time. So this is my following through on that promise, and whatever it looks like, I'm sorry if people feel uncomfortable having these discussions, but however we can structure these meetings so it looks like we're not sponsoring it or we're not endorsing it, we're not recommending it, but we feel it's as essential to have this information before we look at our legislation even. So how do you handle that and make sure people understand that this is our opportunity to engage people and find out what they think?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with one of the meetings being, our meeting, where we invite people, but you could have a meeting at Noble and we could attend it.
Yes.
And we don't have to, it doesn't have to be recorded. I have no problem with it being recorded at all.
Sure.
But, it wouldn't be a council meeting. And I would just ask council members to refrain from asking questions at those meetings only because there could be a situation where we're accidentally back and forthing. Certainly do that at our meeting.
So is it all right, acceptable to everybody if Addie schedules a meeting, setting it up as a town hall in chambers or wherever we feel it's most comfortable to start this engagement process? And then maybe even you could have some dates at that point where you can share with people that you're gonna meet at the libraries or wherever it is that you.
Okay, I'm gonna consult with the League of Women Voters as well.
Yeah.
They were holding off before getting involved until they knew that this was gonna happen, which was fair. And so I know that they'll be doing forums closer to the election, but they also are on board with doing this before this goes before council. And then I can get back to you guys with some proposed dates.
I have mixed feelings about going first, about like our meeting being the first meeting. Maybe, I don't know, I'd like to hear what other people think.
I'm unclear of the structure of whatever this town hall is. I'm not familiar with council holding a town hall.
Well, I'm
in
calling
this
them town
context.
halls.
Yeah, it's really a hearing.
It's a hearing.
Okay,
It's
so
bringing it
similar
before the
to
public.
any like
Yeah,
a zoning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where people come to
It's a
express
public
their.
hearing as opposed to a quasi judicial hearing like a zoning board.
Sure, okay.
But it would include,
Public comment.
yes, because we really do need to hear from folks, and
Potentially a
this is why I really
presentation.
appreciate hearing what we don't wanna hear is really helpful. And so I would see it as a give and take, but doing an education piece, doing a demonstration, and then opening it up for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, see, we're not really in a position to do the education piece. So maybe it would be better if we did ours a little bit more down the road, just
Sure,
because.
sure.
I mean, that's what I'm interested in hearing is when people can digest this, what do you think? I don't want them to come to us for that information. Go ahead.
So I recall when Linda Strasky from the Charter Review Commission came in and talked about basically the first 4 buckets which were on the ballot. That was the buckets, that's a word that we use to define the 5 pieces, there are 5 recommendations. The first 4 recommendations, the voters passed, but they did underneath one giant amendment. And then we have bucket number 5, which is ranked choice voting. I'm wondering if it makes sense. I mean, I think the hearing needs to be, council needs to listen. It would be great if maybe one of the former members of the Charter Review Commission can explain why the recommendation was made and maybe partner with someone to explain that, and that could be one of the items, maybe the first item in the hearing.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
And then it gives us the opportunity to ask our questions because we have some new council members that need to get brought up to speed. And we have, I mean, the former council implied that we'd be interested in bringing this on, but we're gonna have 3 new council members by that time, assuming we fill a position.
We're gonna need to move on quickly. Go ahead.
If I could just real quickly, I think that's a good point, both with respect to the new council members and also I think I heard the same thing expressed by the members of council as this was discussed, but council really expresses itself through a vote and it was not sent to the voters last year. So your council will need to take this up sort of anew. And using this process seems like a perfectly reasonable way to do it. I would just also make 2 points. I'm assuming that somebody will want to incorporate or involve the Board of Elections in these discussions to make sure that as part of that education process that the Vice President described, that council is hearing from all relevant speakers. And then in addition, I think this is bigger than putting a paragraph in that says ranked choice voting in the charter, because election issues are kind of interwoven in a number of different places in the charter. And so, we will need to ferret all of those out and figure out what they should look like depending upon what council decides to do.
And Michelle, I think your draft did do that. I saw it in, 4 or 5 different places. It might have even been more, but right? I mean, it's you kind of scoured the.
Yes, and in fact,
I agree
we had to cancel our meeting. I was set to meet with someone at the Board of Elections with these questions, like what does it cost, can they split, how does this work and all of that. But we canceled because of the weather, so we'll hopefully get to it this week. Because I want to be able to give you what kind of cost this may cost, okay? And can you and Lakewood is hoping to get their amendment on the docket in February. So
For May.
No, they're not shooting for May, they're totally shooting for November, but they're hoping to start the process and get it, that's just.
Okay.
And I'm meeting with them tomorrow, so in any case, yes, those are the Board of Election stuff is the consideration. And there will be a licensing fee, and again, I want you to understand that if it passes tomorrow, it's not gonna go into effect tomorrow. There is a process, it could take 2-3 years, because it's gotta go through the Board of Elections and the states, and we know what that looks like. Okay, so let me rush through this. So this is where I'm showing you your recess, and then we need to get the ballot language. If this is moving forward, September 4th is the drop dead date for that. So I'm looking at this as, once we know that this is gonna go on the ballot, we can begin the process of campaigning, okay? And which is just a different bucket for us money-wise. We set up a 501c4 in order to be able to run a campaign. And that would be in September, October. I'd like to be able to start that. If this gets approved for the ballot, that's sooner we can start. And it'll be Democratize Ohio is our 501c4, and that will be with our coalition partners, who include Rank the Vote, National, Fair Vote, which I've already talked about, Represent Women. In fact, the person and her husband who founded Fair Vote, she now runs Represent Women, so they're huge on RCV. Black Voters Matter. Hopefully, I'll be adding the League of Women Voters of Cleveland Heights, and I have a meeting this week with Greater Cleveland Congregations, so that we can they have a different kind of scope than we have. So that's where we kind of are right now, and I will get some, fill in some of that Board of Election stuff for you. And then I have Kyle here. I sent some draft language, I don't know if you guys got it, for Fair Vote language for ballot and amendment. And Kyle Herman was a co-founder of Rank the Vote Ohio, and he is now the president of Stowe City Council in his second term. And so Kyle, if you have any questions about what is proportional representation versus instant runoff, because the recommended language has the mayor race being instant runoff because it's just a single winner. When you have a council that's all at large, you have multiple winners. So what does that look like? And I think I want to make sure you guys understand that, but that could be another session. But if you had questions now, Kyle can help answer that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we just don't have time for
I know,
that right
yeah,
now,
okay.
but I'm glad you came. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Michelle.
And
You're welcome,
yeah,
Neil.
thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity. And then I'll just kind of communicate with you guys with feelings.
Okay, in a moment, not a moment, but in a few minutes, I'm hoping Brian Anderson is here. So, okay, yeah, so we have one more topic and then. Oh. Yes, you're right. You know what, I'm fine with, I mean, if you guys, I have a few notes that I never got to on legislative stuff, but none of it is, like urgent. So maybe I'll skip that and let's talk about the retreat, because I do think we need to start planning. You wanna take the lead on this as far as, what do you think, in March maybe?
Me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at you, but you're the big idea guy, so.
Well,
We
no, I
had
think,
previously held the first 3 Saturdays in March, I believe.
Well, we can't do it on Saturday.
Sorry, Sundays, the first 3 Sundays in March.
Okay. So.
March 1st, 8th, and 15th was what we had previously held.
the most important is picking a date and then determining how we wanna run it. If we want a moderator or not. I think at first though, I think we just need to have a conversation amongst ourselves to kind of talk about some of the stuff.
And I'd like to start that now. I mean, we've had moderators with the first, 3 and 4 years ago when we did these, and it was a lot of money, and I don't think it didn't do anything for me. So I don't know. You were there. You two were there. Moderator, no moderator?
Well, the atmosphere was totally different.
True.
We had some challenging personnel issues. So I would like to suggest that with this group of people, we'll have a more collaborative experience.
So
I guess I labeled it as kind of retreat / workshop, depending on what you guys want to get at. Cause if you guys are wanting to, retreat, I think, just cause what we've done, talk about issues, but I'm not sure that's really the point here. The point is more, I think, what you guys are wanting to.
maybe we want to talk about what we want to accomplish
Yeah.
as a body, and the question is, do we need a moderator for, I don't know. But go ahead.
No, well, I mean, maybe we need to go around the table and decide what
We
we
should.
wanna get out of it. And, what I'm hopeful for is collaboration between council and the administration, specifically the mayor, on really what some objectives are. I mean, where do we wanna be a year from now? Maybe where do we wanna be 2 years from now? I mean, what are some of the areas that need some attention? Cause I don't think, we know things are difficult because of the last 4 years. I mean, I'd be surprised if we could digest everything we wanna digest.
I mean, I'd be happy with 2 buckets, like this year and longer range,
Yeah, I'd be too.
Craig, do you have a opinion about a moderator? Well, wait a minute, before you do that, Jessica, anything about like what you'd like to accomplish and Joe,
I mean, I think that this could be an opportunity for a couple of things. One being a real deep discussion on improving community engagement across all the work that we do. I just don't think we have time in our committee of the whole meetings or any other forum. So that's something I'm interested in. I think it would be, a kill 2 birds with 1 stone situation if we were to do an Open Meetings Act training while we're all together. So that was another idea I had. And I guess while I have the floor, I would just say 8th or the 15th would be better because we still have the 2nd to appoint the last council person. And I just would give us a little bit more time to let that person get onboarded, whoever that is.
that's a good point.
So going off of community engagement, one thing that I've experienced as prior to council being on the Transportation and Environmental Sustainability Committee, and then now as a council member working with these committees, I think a deep dive on how we can best leverage the many experts in our community that are not on council but are volunteering their time on these boards and commissions. And for a lot of people, they feel that their time is not well spent. We have high churn on those because people come in wanting to commit and volunteer their time, and they just don't feel like it's well utilized. So having a conversation about both at the council committee structure, if the current structure is optimized, and then how we filter up the resident advisory committees to the various council committees to ensure that we're getting that feedback, that we're utilizing, the experts in the city, and that we're just operating efficiently.
I think Open Meetings Act, adding that to community engagement and, planning, short-term and long-term, I can tell you these, these are very time-consuming topics.
And I'll say I personally don't feel the need that we need a moderator at this stage. I think we can get together in a room and work through some of these. And if we're having issues where, we're up against the wall, maybe bring in a third party. But at this point, I don't see the need for that.
I don't think we have time for open meetings training on this. I mean, I think it's needed. I think it's a separate item. I think it's gonna get in the way, but not in the way, in a bad way. I think we need to schedule something else for that.
Right, that's all I'm saying. I mean, we absolutely do it. We just, and in the best of situations, these are deep discussions that take time. And we don't want to rush through things because we put too much on the agenda. Go ahead.
I think you take on it to get us all in the same room. You look at the initiatives, there's redundancy, each of us has got, I might say I want something done through the Parks and Rec department. And so if we can look at those initiatives that we've already put on, and maybe some we haven't even thought of yet, and assign them at this point to a committee to have that committee do that exploration. And if it goes to maybe asking a citizens committee to do some more research for us on those initiatives, because we just don't have time to pick each other's brains and really figure out, is this doable? I just see that as an opportunity to look at those initiatives strategy wise. And maybe some of them are 2 years down the road, maybe they're not right now.
I think creating an agenda and, times and so forth is, we have to do that. So, March 8th, March 15th, community engagement, first planning, short-term and long-term, and community, how council can, and Mayor, is this, I don't know that you'd need to be there the whole time, but we would definitely like you to be there for a period of time. Am I right about that?
Yes.
I'm happy to join for as little or as long as you'd like. I tried to talk with each council member to understand what goals they have so that we could work in at least one thing from every council member into the work plan. Happy to run through that with folks and hear anything else that has come up since we talked.
Because it seems to me that we're gonna need to kind of get on the same page in the meeting, and then, talk to the mayor about how this, this might work. Councilwoman Cohen, anything else?
No, I think this is great. Very excited about it.
So how do you wanna put together the agenda? Go ahead.
There was an expectations agenda that I put together.
Yes.
Why don't I look at that, brush it off, share it with council leadership, and then let you guys decide what you wanna do, whether you use it or not.
Yeah, can you bring that to the next meeting and then maybe send it out before the meeting so we can look at it, and then we'll discuss it in committee at all. So we'll put that back on the agenda.
And I'll put out a doodle poll for the 8th or 15th.
Councilor Cole made a great point that the 8th is probably too soon in terms of having our new.
No, the first.
Well,
The
Seven.
8th is the second Monday. Or second Sunday.
put your doodle poll out and see what you get, Eddie. 8th, 15th, and 23rd, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do 23rd, but I'll still put it as an option.
I'd vote for the Ides of March. I think that would be the best time. No, because then the person will be around at least a couple of weeks. Although, you know. Just for the people that are here, we are we're in the process of choosing a seventh member. We're meeting with some people tomorrow and you know, we have to do it by March 2nd. I mean, that's our deadline. All right, is it, if it's okay with everybody, let's do the executive session, which will be kind of quick. So if you're, I'm gonna excuse the members of the audience. And Craig, do you wanna read it?
Does someone have it in front of them? This is on real estate.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having us.
I can, wait, no, that's the wrong meeting.
Thank you.
There's no.
Is it
Sorry,
on?
I should have given you a heads up.
for Andrews, that's here,
No, there is no specific. Is it for real estate or is it for personnel matters?
Real estate. Real estate.
Real estate.
No, we need to be specific. I don't,
Patty will find it.
Isn't
But
section
I bet
C.
Jim finds it.
that's just the, there needs some specific language.
So it's not real estate, it's the sale or lease of city-owned real property.
There you go.
Check out this organization.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session to consider the terms of purchase or lease of real or personal property for public purposes or for the terms of sale or lease of city-owned real or personal property.
There's a second. Second.
No.
Any discussion? Go ahead,
Yes,
Ann.
that.
Cobb,
Aye.
Larson. Aye. Posh,
Yes.
DeWitt Foy.
Yes.
Cohen,
I
Fuda.
Aye. Okay, we're out of executive session and I'm gonna adjourn this meeting at 7:31.